Today we're looking at embracing diversity in literacy. My name is Jeanette Toomer. You all know me. I've been teaching English in high schools for most of my career, for about 14 years. And other than that, I've taught a few years in middle school. I'm also the founder of Drama Discovery and Learning, which does diversity workshops for nonprofits and for school staff. So, and that's DDL has been around since 2008. So I really like this topic. So we're going to start, but we're going to start with, since we're talking diversity, and I know you guys know that song In the Room from Hamilton. So you know, when we do welcome and introductions, we want to know who's in the room. So I'm going to start. I said a little bit about myself, but I also want you to tell me your cultural and racial background on both sides of your family, okay, as we go forward. And what do? Okay. So I'll tell you a little bit about my cultural and racial background. I'm African American. I have some Native American heritage on my mother's side. Her father's father was a Native American. And I'm originally from Philadelphia. I always say Philadelphia because I was raised in Philly, but actually I was born in DC and came to New York, went to college, got married, and the rest is history, and have two wonderful daughters. So let's go with who's next? Who wants to do the next introduction? Come on, somebody.
Okay, I'll go next. Oh, my Wi-Fi is good. The questions are again. Where I'm from.
Who are you? What do you do? And what's your cultural and racial background?
Okay. My name is Mia Mensa. I am a physical therapist. I'm also a professor. And my background, I'm African American.
Okay. Thank you, Nia. All right, who's next?
My name is Lisa Toomer, and I'm a laboratory manager. And my cultural background is African American.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, this is how we embrace diversity when we first begin. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Jay Toomer, African American, and I'm a medical science liaison. And I'm originally from Springfield, Massachusetts, though I was born in Fresno, California.
Really? I never knew that, Jay. Where in California?
Fresno.
Fresno. Wow. Well, thank you, Jay.
Sure.
All right. I think I've been to Springfield too. When I was much younger, I did a workshop there. Okay, who's next? I think Queen is here too. Come on, Queen. Queen? All right, I'm going to look at participants later, but I think
here. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, I am. I am Queen Banuzzi. I am a physician of podiatric surgery. My parents are both Nigerian. I was born in America, but I'm first, I guess, generation, American here.
Okay, great. I didn't hear where your parents were from.
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Okay, thank you so much. All right, is that everybody? Okay, so I recommend if you're with a new group that if you're embracing diversity, which in literacy, it has to do with speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So first you want to celebrate the diverse people who are in your group, okay? So our agenda, we're going to ask the question, well, why should we embrace diversity in literacy? And there's one phrase that captures that, and it's called windows and mirrors, which I'm going to talk about briefly. Literacy goals always have to do with speaking and listening, reading, and of course, writing, and obviously critical thinking, especially which actually young children can do too, not just teenagers. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Any questions so far? All right, so we looked at who's in the room. Why diversity in literacy now? Well, one of the reasons is that we have a very diverse student population, okay, especially in New York City. So in New York City public schools, 40% are Hispanic, 25% are Black, 15% are Asian, and 13% are white. Yet the literature that's taught in public schools does not really reflect that diversity. In New York City charter schools, 51% are Black, 40% are Hispanic, 5% other, and 4% white. So what we want to do is why we want to affirm students' identities, share cultural values, build cooperative and collaborative spirit, and we also want to dispel prejudices and stereotypes, okay, among these groups, okay? So once the children get to, the children, I shouldn't even say once, because young children, they just love whoever, you know, they don't even look at races. The prejudices usually come from the adults, and you don't want to hand that down to the children. So you really want to have an open communication, speaking and listening. You also want to have some literature that is about Hispanic people, and that is also about Black people and Asian people that the students can read about, so they don't listen to mindless prejudices and stereotypes. All right, now I did mention windows and mirrors. This is a theory that really captures, a metaphor, I believe, that really captures the heart of what education should be about. And I'm sure you can read it on your screen, but I'll read it to you. It's from a very well-known educator, a Black woman called Bishop. She said, books are sometimes windows, offering views of worlds that may be real or imagined, familiar or strange. These windows are also sliding glass doors, and readers have only to walk through in imagination to become part of whatever world has been created and recreated by the author. When lighting conditions are just right, however, a window can also be a mirror. Literature transforms human experience and reflects it back to us. And in that reflection, we can see our own lives and experiences as part of the larger human experience. Reading then becomes a means of self-affirmation, and readers often seek their mirrors in books. So especially for younger readers, they're looking for that Black girl or that Black boy or that Dominican boy or that Puerto Rican child in the books they're reading that's just like them. They notice it, they recognize it, and it affirms who they are, which makes them want to read even more, which is, as a teacher, that's what you want. You want them to be interested in reading more, okay? The windows is where if you are giving them as much of a diverse landscape, you know, whether it's in electronics, whether it's medicine, whether it's in aerospace, whether it's in farming, agriculture, deep sea drilling, whatever it is, if you can keep showing them windows into these different careers, they begin to see themselves there. And they begin to realize, oh, I have choices. This looks interesting because of that, but that looks interesting because of this. And they begin to think, okay, maybe I can do that. And before you know it, they're beginning to think about what they can do and how they can get there. Okay, any questions so far? All right, tell me if I'm going too fast. I have an article that I wanted to share with you, which is from the New York Times, which really brilliantly shows this idea of why books are mirrors and windows, okay? I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's pretty long, but it's written. This is an article from 2014, but this statistic was very interesting because that wasn't that long ago. Of 3,200 children's books published in 2013, just 93 were about Black people, according to a study by the Cooperative Children's Book Center at the University of Wisconsin. Now, this is written by Walter D. Myers, who has written so many books about Black characters based in Harlem. But listen to what he says, because for those of you as parents, you sit and your child sits in your lap and you're reading to them. Look at how he begins. Reading came early to me, but I didn't think of the words as anything special. I don't think my stepmom thought of what she was doing as more than spending time with me in our small Harlem apartment. From my comfortable perch on her lap, I watched as she moved her finger slowly across the page. She probably read at about the 3rd grade level, but that was good enough for the true romance magazine she read. So obviously it's inappropriate stuff, but he just liked just being there, sitting there. I didn't understand what the stories were about, what bosom meant, or how someone's heart could be broken. To me, it was just the comfort of leaning against mama and imagining the characters and what they were doing. Okay, windows and mirrors. What were they? Well, not mirrors, he's trying to figure out what they were doing. But then he explains it later when he gets to some books he should be reading. Later, when my sisters brought home comic books, I got mama to read them to me too. The magazines and comics pushed me along the road of the imaginative process. When I got my first books, The Little Engine That Could, Bible Stories for Every Day, and Goldilocks and the Three Bears, I used them on the same journeys. In the landscape of my mind, I labored as hard as I could to get up the hill. I stood on the plain next to David as he fought Goliath and tasted the porridge with Goldilocks. So he's putting himself right into these stories, okay? As a teenager, I romped the forest with Robin Hood and trembled to the sound of gunfire with Henry in The Red Badge of Courage. Later, when mama's problems began to overwhelm her, I wrestled with the demons of dealing with one's mother with Stephen Dedalus in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. But by then, I was beginning the quest for my own identity. To an extent, I found who I was in the books I read. I was a person who felt the drama of great pain and greater joys, whose emotions could soar within the 5-act structure of a Shakespearean play, or find quiet comfort in the poems of Gabriela Mistral. Every book was a landscape upon which I was free to wander. So as we said before, the students do self-identify, and the more they identify, the more they want to read. Unfortunately, some bad things happened. His uncle was murdered. His family became dysfunctional with alcohol. And then he says when he realized that he would not be able to go to college, he began to despair. So what did he do? I read voraciously, spending days in Central Park reading when I should have been going to school. But there was something missing. I needed more than the characters in the Bible to identify with, or even the characters in Arthur Miller's plays or my beloved Balzac. As I discovered who I was, a Black teenager in a white-dominated world, I saw that these characters, these lives were not mine. I didn't want to become the, quote, Black representative or some shining example of diversity. What I needed really, was to become an integral and valued part of the mosaic that I saw around me. So now, as he's older, he's not seeing any books written with Black characters, and he doesn't see himself in them anymore. So he's beginning to separate from his love for books. Okay, he said they became more like friends with whom I no longer felt comfortable. And this is the part that bothered me. He said, I stopped reading. I stopped going to school. On my 17th birthday, I joined the Army. In retrospect, I see that I had lost the potential person I would become, an odd idea that I could not have articulated at the time, but that seems so clear today. My post-Army days became dreadful, a drunken stumble through life, with me holding on just enough to survive. Fueled by the shortest and most meaningful conversation I had ever had in a school hallway with the one English teacher in my high school, Stuyvesant, who knew I was going to drop out. I began to write short columns for a local tabloid and racy stories for men's magazines. Seeing my name in print helped a little. And then what happens? He reads a story where he sees people like him. The story was called Sonny's Blues, written by James Baldwin. I didn't love the story, but I was lifted by it, for it took place in Harlem. And it was a story concerned with Black people like those I knew. By humanizing the people who were like me, Baldwin's story also humanized me. The story gave me permission that I didn't know I needed, the permission to write about my own landscape, my own map. So there is the mirror. He needed to see the mirror of himself in stories of his community, of his people. And he says, during my only meeting with Baldwin at City College, I blurted out to him what his story had done for me. Quote, I know exactly what you mean, he said. I had to leave Harlem and the United States to search for who I was. Isn't that a shame? Okay, so he wished he had met Baldwin maybe when he was, or read the story when he was 15 or 14, because he was searching for who he was. Okay, and self-identity, especially as you become a teenager, is so important. Today, I am a writer, but I also see myself as something of a landscape artist. I paint pictures of scenes for inner city youth that are familiar, and I people the scenes with brothers and aunts and friends they all have met. Thousands of young people have come to me saying that they love my books for some reason or the other. But I strongly suspect that what they have found in my pages is the same thing I found in Sonny's Blues. They have been struck by the recognition of themselves in the story, a validation of their existence as human beings, an acknowledgement of their value by someone who understands who they are. It is the shock of recognition at its highest level. Okay, that's all I'm going to read from there because I thought it was the perfect article to really show why windows and mirrors are so important. Okay, especially for children. Some of the words he used, self-affirmation, self-validation, search for identity, okay? These are mirrors, okay? They can be windows looking out, but first you gotta see yourself in the book, okay? You can see yourself, well, yeah, I could be that person. You know, oh, I'm that person. I came from a rough background, but I survived and I became a success, okay? So how do we embrace diversity in speaking and reading and writing? Well, one of the things we had our go round, which we just did, and that question could be anything. It could be like, what is your favorite dish that your mother makes? Okay, if we did that right now, we would probably come up with at least 4 or 5 different dishes. Okay, which reflects something of your culture. Okay, if I said it, my mother's deceased, but if I answer that question, I have to say, my mother, believe it or not, spaghetti and meatballs. I don't know why, whenever she made spaghetti and meatballs, I was like, wow, okay, can I have some more? So, and who wants to volunteer? What was your favorite, or what is your favorite meal that your mother used to make or makes? No volunteers? One person?
Well, I love your mac and cheese.
Can't hear you. Somebody said something.
I love your mac and cheese.
Oh, okay. Yes, macaroni and cheese. And I didn't learn how to make that till I was a grown up. But anyway, thank you. All right. So you see how there's going to be variety. All right. Uh, Discussions about picture books. Now, first I'm looking at speaking and listening. You have young children. Yes, they can have a book. If you go to, well, Bank Street closed recently, but you can go on Amazon and you can type in picture books. Like if you have a child who obviously doesn't read yet, a baby, and you can actually read the picture book to them, okay? Specialists in this area say that you should use real language, not baby talk, okay? Because they say by the time a baby actually says daddy or mommy, you have already said 1,000,000 words to that child. So don't be afraid to talk to your child. Urban settings, Faith Ringgold, as you move up a little older, does wonderful books about the city with beautiful pictures. Greetings in different languages. Okay, so hola in Spanish, bonjour in French. Okay, there's certain words they can learn just to understand and greet somebody who might actually speak that language. One of the things we did in our daycare was we taught the ABCs in Spanish and French and English. And actually with the internet, you can find some wonderful videos that have them in each different language with great graphics, okay, cartoon characters, etc. ABCs in Spanish, my favorite one was Elsa on Sesame Street. Sing. Well, those of us who know a little girl named Sarai Mensah, that girl can sing, okay? and she doesn't really know all the words, which is what I love about her so much, She's like, I'm going to sing this song and that's it. And I'm going to prance around the room like I'm a princess and I'm going to sing my song. And she sings her song. And of course, you have the closed captioning on the screen, and a lot of times when she's singing, I'm trying to sing the words so she can kind of hear them a little more and incorporate them. But it doesn't matter. She enjoys it. She's loving language. Anything with her loving language and expressing themselves, you want them to do that. Mother Goose Club has all the Mother Goose rhymes you learned when you were a little kid, plus some nice, actually they added a diverse cast. The current Mother Goose Club on the internet has Black characters, it has Hispanic characters, has Asian characters. And I noticed that because a couple years ago they didn't. All right, so Disney movie songs are also closed captioned. If you have an older child who really wants to learn the words, they can learn the words. So that's also anything speaking, listening, singing. What about reading? Well, there's a great site called First Book, where they actually have a diversity section, different cultural group sections, firstbook.com. That some of the books are discounted because they sell them all the time. Barnes and Noble, even Amazon has books with Hispanic and Black characters. Read aloud with your child. And don't stop when they get like 3 or 4 years old. Believe me, even in first and second grade, because you're the mommy or the aunt, they're gonna like sitting down with you and you can read a page and then they can read a page and then you act like you don't understand something and say, well, can you explain what happened to Jose on that page? And they'll explain it to you, okay? And now you're moving into reading comprehension just because you can, and you can help them learn to develop those skills. Take your child once a week to the local library, which just opened, I think this week, because of the pandemic, it was closed. Check out the children's section, lots and lots and lots of books. They will just sit there and look at the books and then pick one. They can pick the one they want and sign them up for a library card. It's free. Writing. My first app that I had that I loved was ABC Circus, which has the ABCs, of course. It has numbers, it has phonics, it has the sounds of the letters. It even has a part where they can actually learn how to draw letters on the screen, which they like, because that would be my next step, I think, with somebody is to have them do it on paper. Okay, they can draw or do watercolor pictures, create shapes with Play-Doh. You want them to learn shapes. You can even do an acrostic poem. Acrostic poem is something that any child, let's say, maybe from 3 up, you put their name on a sheet of paper. It's a nice affirmation activity. So if we put, say, Anna, okay, ANNA, and we would say Anna is active. She is something that begins with N. She's no nonsense, okay? She is, and you can go before N too if you want, okay? But then you want a word for every letter, and then you can post it up. You can color it with crayons on a big piece of construction paper, and it's a nice affirmative way to just do something that reflects who they are and affirms, validates them, as they say. While you're walking or driving, I remember I was taking Aaron somewhere. This was when I used to pick him up from the daycare. And so I'm turning onto Riverdale. And all of a sudden he says, stop. And I said, what? He said, stop sign. And he actually read the sign. And I was like, wow, that was awesome. So you never know when they're going to like pipe up and say it. But believe me, you're contributing to their literacy education, okay? So it's not just diversity in culture, it's diversity in locations, whether it's the beach, whether it's urban, because I know some people are going to the beach this summer, whether you're at the pool, okay? Name things for them, okay? And they will remember. And now that you're in the environment, they will remember it even better, and you're building their language repertoire. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so this is my question for you. What can you do? What is one thing you can do to embrace diversity in literacy? So we'll go around, think about it for a minute, and then we'll get an answer from everybody. What's one thing you can do to embrace diversity in literacy? What do you think? Do we have somebody who wants to answer? It could be something, it doesn't, oh, where is everybody? Okay.
I'll answer. I really like your presentation and just getting me thinking about what I can do with my grandchildren. But even more personally, I enjoy reading different books and different authors and such from different countries. But the thing that I'm most interested with or by is what their story is, what their stance is, what their life experience has been to paint, what they're saying and why they're saying it that way. And so I think I can do more of that to just really understand where a person's coming from or why they might view the world the way that they do. So that was all.
That's good. And as a matter of fact, somebody told me years ago, some of the best questions to ask in terms of helping a child think deeper are why and how questions. Because a lot of times, especially as young as our grandchildren are, we know on the surface, they may not even know why. But if you ask them, it causes them to think a little deeper. And they may have an answer for you. So that's good, Jay. Thank you. All right, who's next? This is our closing, everybody. One thing you can do to embrace diversity in literacy. Come on, somebody. I know I got Nia's a parent out there. I know Lisa's an aunt. Okay, come on, somebody.
I'll go.
Okay.
I think it was a great presentation. I would say that I guess one thing I could do is do more research in regards to like the characters and the backgrounds of characters to then kind of do some more cultural or some background to the characters in books so then
Mhm.
I can educate my children more.
Yes, good point. Absolutely. And they may even ask you about it, depending on what book you're reading. They may even ask you a question about that. So you'll be ready with the answer when they do. So that's great. Thank you. Okay, who's next?
I'll answer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think for me, I mean, I do have resources in my children's grandmother. However, in terms of things that I think I can do a little bit better, is I think I should put up some more pictures like on the walls of characters in books and famous books, or especially if it's books that are characters from books that I will introduce to them as they get older. I can
Yes,
slowly begin the introduction by putting up maybe some pictures and characters on their wall to kind of increase that exposure so that they will know who that character is and maybe get more excited about reading about it when they get older.
that's a great idea. As a matter
Thank
of
you.
fact, I meant to mention this because not only that, if it's a book, like if it's a book like for Sarai, who's really just learning to read, or even for, because I know this Aaron likes that Diary of a Wimpy Kid and he likes the pictures. Why can't he draw a picture of something that's going on in the book and write about it, you know? Or maybe Sarai is younger, but she could draw a picture of what she's reading, right? Of something that she likes and what she's reading, like what's that book? What's the Face? Which she would like to make the faces, like if the face is oh, that's stinky, she would like get frown up her nose and everything. And sometimes you can act out stories as well. Even something as simple as that, like yo, yes, you can like yo, yes, and so they get to see the feeling behind the words, which is like the beginning of the introduction to dialogue and what it reveals about character. So pictures would be good, and then they could write something about the picture, Nia, as well. Even if it's just a sentence or a few words, that would be fine. So that's a great idea. All right. So do we have anybody else or who wants to answer the question?
I can answer just for me. I'm not a parent, but a forever
Okay,
auntie.
good.
But I would say, just thinking about my experience as a kid, really being a science buff,
Huh?
and yeah, and not really seeing that representation in books that you read as a kid of people who look like you that are doing science experiments or being doctors and stuff like that. And so making more of an effort to show that activity in a diverse way, because there's a lot more books and a lot more imagery out there now that show that. But I think also bridging that application to them doing those activities, just like what you were saying, is showing the books and reading it to them, but also putting them in the position where they're doing some of those activities that they're seeing in the books themselves, even starting at an early age. So I
Yes.
think that that might be part of helping reinforce what that diversity looks like and how they apply it in their everyday activities. It's just having them do those things that they're seeing in the books. So
Yes, yes. I think that's really good. Because I can't say my own background was that diverse in reading. But the thing I still remember, because I don't remember reading about anybody black at all in in high school. But I had a third grade, and I'll never forget her, Mrs. Pierce, a third grade black woman teacher in an all white. I mean, everybody, all the basically nuns. I went to Catholic school. Um, but that was the only time in my whole school career that I had a black teacher, Mrs. Pierce. And this is why I say this thing about pictures, because we read about Frederick Douglass. And I was like, oh, I'm in 3rd grade and I'm reading about Frederick Douglass. Oh my God. And then she told us to draw a picture of him. So I drew my picture and everything. She takes my picture and puts it up on the bulletin board. Well, I was done at that point. I was like, oh my God. And I mean, I felt so validated. I've never forgotten that as long as I live. You know, so Queen is really important for young children to see these role models. And there's more books about it now. Like yesterday, and we have to fight against it because now there's a fight against critical race theory. And one district down south was saying they didn't want the kids to read the book about Ruby Bridges Goes to School. And this is like a book for like, what, 4th grade? And she wrote it herself, and it's a true story, okay, obviously. And they were saying they didn't want the kids to have the book, and that's just ridiculous, okay? The only other Black person I remember learning about in school was Martin Luther King and Mae Jemison, and that was it. I think Jameson was even after I graduated. So in terms of scientists, I think, and doctors, there's such a rich Black tradition there, and all of those books should be in our libraries, okay? But remember, if you have one that you have in your house that you can share with a child, or you can go online. For those of you who want to be online and find good books, go to Epic. Epic has all kinds of books, diverse books, different reading levels, and they have role models, scientists, historians, etc. So, and you can just pick. And then if you happen to be with a child, whether it's your niece or your cousin or, you know, whatever, you can say, oh, let's read this book. And you whip out your iPhone and it's there. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for coming today. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to thank you publicly for leading our series and kicking it off for us. Thank you so much, Ms. Toomer. You were very thorough, and I love how you got us all involved. So thank you so much again. So if there are questions, please feel free to ask now or throw them in the chat. Can you share your contact information, Ms. Toomer?
Yes. Oh, everybody else you're talking about, okay.
I did have a quick question, Ms. Toomer.
Yes, what's your question?
This is Erica again. Okay.
Hi, Erica.
So my question deals with the fact that everything is so digital now, right? And kids spend most of their time with tablets and things like that. And it's not so much reading, sorry about that. It's not so much reading as it is like the, you know, the imagery of learning. And they kind of get really, you know, pretty much that they spend most
in
of
the pictures.
Yeah. Is there a way to bridge that with enforcing the literacy portion, like the reading and the writing? How is it possible to really incorporate those two to mesh those two together? Because once my nieces and nephews get started on the tablet, that's what they do. And
I think.
And I was just gonna say, sometimes I try to do like, oh, let me get a gift certificate to a bookstore, and but most of I think that I'm trying to push something that they might not necessarily have that much interest in. But I'm just wondering if there's a way to kind of make a connection between those two to where both of them are just as important as the other when it comes to learning.
Okay. Actually, and I don't know how old they are, but
range from like 14 to 3. They're
older. Okay. I think a lot of what happens is you have to find books by people like James Reynolds, are they boys or are they girls?
Mix.
Okay, so for the boys, there's a book called American Boys, and there's another book that's going to be a movie that he wrote. But he is the writer today who is writing books for that age group. Okay, boys and girls. Walter Dean Myers Actually, get them to watch Monster on Netflix. It'll shake them up, okay? Because it shows how easily American Boys and Monster shows how easily our young people are seen as threats to society, you know, when they are racially profiled and how they can protect themselves. Walter Dean Myers. It's on Netflix now. I have to tell you, it's a very easy book to read. I read it when I was teaching middle school years ago. It shook me up. I gotta tell you, it shook me up, and I know it shook my kids up. But how easily you can arrest somebody, and a Black kid, and have them in front of a judge, okay, and with their life on the line, and they didn't kill anybody. This was just the lookout guy, supposedly the lookout guy. So Monster, I highly recommend for that middle school crowd. There's a lot of books by Virginia Hamilton, who wrote some, what's the one I like the best? Seely, Seely. And the thing is, you can introduce it and you can say, well, why don't I read it with you to begin with? Seely, okay? And get their reaction, okay? And see what happens, okay? The other thing is, you can ask them questions, or you can, and probably the mother's gonna have to do this to make it consistent, because I know Nia did some of this with Aaron. Like, you don't have to write a report about it, but just write a paragraph. I'm gonna give you a little reading journal, okay? And just write a paragraph about the next 10 pages you read and sum up what happened, okay? Or what you really liked about it, or questions you have about it, okay? And they may say, oh, this sounds like too much work, you know, whatever. I say, well, you know, these are really good books, okay? And I would say that's the best way to go about it. Now, the other thing I was saying before, they're kind of old for closed captioning, but sometimes there are some movies like Do the Right Thing that are also good history lessons. X is a good one. My favorite for that age group, The Great Debaters. So if you're looking for imagery, The Great Debaters is like my #1 best movie for Black teenagers. And it's a true story. It's about the Harlem debate team back in 1936. Not the Harvard one, but a debate team from a small college down south in 1935 actually won the national debate championship. And their last round had to be at Harvard University. And they won. Most people don't know that they beat the white Harvard University debating team. And so that's my favorite movie to show in high schools, I must tell you. But then you can also show them some things about their history. There's the documentary 13, which, you know, a lot of kids, you know, you try to tell them about the history of racism in America, and, you know, they're like, oh, here we go again. Show them the movie, okay? Show them the movie, okay? When I saw that, I had a mixed group of Black and Latino kids about a year ago. And they had no idea that this was really a legacy and tradition of law and order, of putting Black people behind bars. And the way she shows the history and the facts. So these are some things they could read, they could watch, that are educational, that tells them something about their history and helps them to know a little bit more about what they should look forward to doing in their lives. Does that help, Erica?
Yes, definitely. I appreciate that. I really do.
No
those
problem.
are great. I remember those movies, The Great Debaters, great movie. And I think that's
absolutely
good too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
And they will love you for it. They will.
I'll let you know what they say. I'm sure they will like that one though, for sure. And you said Monsters was the other one. I think I've seen that's
Monsters.
That's
Monsters
a new one, right?
is on Netflix now.
Yeah.
It's on Netflix now. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate this.
Oh, you're welcome. All right, you guys have a great
as we close
day.
out, would you like to share? Ms. Toomer, would you like to share about the things
Yes.
you're working on with the group?
Well,
Your book?
okay. Well,
Before we
I
go?
just found another publisher who may publish my memoir, which is called Precious Struggles, The Making of a 21st Century Woman. And I'm going to be revising some of that this week so I can send it to them. And they're going to give it a look, see? And that's my main project at this moment. Right now, I'm a professor at a college here in New York part-time. I'm teaching first year composition. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Oh, my website.
Thank you.
Oh,
I
yes, you
shared
can
your
check out my
email just in
website.
case anybody wants to get.
Okay. Well, feel free to check out my website. I have
Can you put that in the
my
chat?
website. Oh, can I put it in the chat? How do I do that? Let's see, chat. Okay, let me find that. Okay, my computer doesn't want to work, but settings, where is it? Reactions?
It's okay. Is it drama discovery and learning.com?
Yes, it's www.dramadiscoveryandlearning. I don't see where chat is here, so.
Okay, I put it in the chat. You're all set. Thank you
Oh,
again, Ms.
thank you.
Toomer.
Thank you,
And
Nina.
thank you all for joining in. Next week
Thank
we have
you.
a great speaker, Dr. Clete Manuzzi, joining us to talk about the diabetic foot on Saturday. We look forward to seeing you all again. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you for coming.